Two, three.
Hi, good morning. This is Mike Uzina again of Menorcan Magic Handmade Castanets. I want to do a little short video this morning on the difference between custom made, handmade, different interpretations of it as to exactly what it means. And what brought this on was I got a phone call from a gentleman that wanted a price on a handmade 10-foot mullet castanet. So I gave him the price, and he proceeded to tell me how he could buy that custom handmade net for half of that price. So I tried to explain to him that he couldn't. Tried to explain to him the difference between panel nets and handmade, and he was pretty well convinced that the people that had been was selling this net, had been selling nets for a long time, and I flat told him, I said, well, I can tell you something, I was making nets before they was born. You know, you can't tell me the difference between handmade and panel sewn together. I know the difference. I know the timeline of when all this material became available to people. So anyway, so what I thought I would do is I'm going to show you. First, I went to the dictionary. You know, if you're gonna say something, let's get it straight. And I didn't make this up. This is straight out of Webster's. Definition of handmade: it's made by hand, not by machine, and typically of superior quality. Okay, that's the definition of handmade. Then we go to custom. Now, custom is made or done to order. It is made different in a different way from usual to fit one's needs. Now, I make custom nets, and I'm gonna explain that to you. But first, I'm gonna show you a panel net. This is the start of a panel net. This was 10 foot. I had a bunch of this stuff given to me a few years back from a wonderful gentleman that he operated a net shop. He served the people up in Mayport, Florida for, oh gosh, I think something like 50 years. He made nets for the fishermen up there, and a wonderful person he was. And I would say, looking at the material that he bought good material. It wasn't it was the best you could buy of this particular stuff. And this would be the startings of a net. You know, and these panels are taken and sewn together. They're spread out around and they're sewn together. You have seen them. Some of them are made where they go around this way. Some are up and down. I got to tell you, this was not a cast net. From just looking at this and checking it, the number of meshes from the top to the bottom, he made gill nets for many years for the mullet fishermen up there in Mayport before gill net fishing was banned. This was a panel for a gill net. Same difference. When you open it up, you're not going to be able to see this. I don't think you're going to be able to get a close enough view of this where it's been cut. These are panels that are cut. You can see the strings every place where they cut a knot. Another reason I know this was a gill net, I know what the mesh size is. This is the mesh size of a gill net. So anyhow, you can see the little ends, these little ends here, where every knot was, all the way down. You got little, they left about a 3/4 of an inch sticking out, or less, and where this was, the other part would be stitched to it, knot to knot. And they made this, it made a panel net. And they calling this handmade. I took the liberty myself to go on, do a Google search on it, and I was surprised the number of people that's been making nets for, I guess, some of them 30, 40 years, have been selling nets, and they're advertising handmade nets, and well, okay, I guess you can call it what you want, but there's no way, nobody tied these knots. These are made by a machine. I've told you this story. The Japanese patented the first webbing machine in 1952. That's when they started making this webbing as you see it today. was a wonderful invention. I'm not down in it. It was a wonderful, it enabled the fishing industry to really expand, bigger shrimp trawls, bigger everything, in reference to nets. Didn't take the fishermen long to figure, net makers long, figure out how to cut these things into panels, started out pie shaped. And it was really a heck of a looking net, because you had a big wad of stuff up at the top and then it flared out to the bottom to make the circle. All right, that's enough of that. I want to show you a handmade net. My opinion, now all of this is an opinion. You can take it for a grain of salt, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stake 70 years experience against these people, whatever they couldn't have been making them before 1960, I can tell you, because machine-made webbing, pliable like this, if you want to call that pliable, but it is, compared to what it was in the early years. It was like a wire basket. But in 1960, DuPont did come out with a pliable monofilament that could be, worked with. So that's when they started making panel nets. However, and I remember when all that took place. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you a quick on what I call a handmade net that I've been making a long time. This was particular material is Dacron. I've made nets out of linen, cotton, nylon, Dacron, Spectra fiber, Nicot. I mean, everything that became available over the last 70 years, I've made nets out of it. But the people seem to really enjoy the Dacron. Maybe they like these colors. This is a couple of new colors. This is going to be a 10-foot 10-foot mullet net. I make my mesh are 15, 30 seconds. It's just under, my inch is from knot to knot. You talk about a 1-inch mesh, mine is from knot to knot. So actually the knot itself is I think it's 15, 30 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, this is a handmade net. I'm going to demonstrate exactly why you call it a handmade net. All right, this is what I start with. You start with a spool of material, whatever it may be. This happens to be chartreuse color, 2,500 yards of 30-pound test, micron, Dacron. All right. All right. This is a knitting needle, okay? You fill this needle off of that spool. Here's a mesh board. This board determines what size this mesh is going to be, whether it's a 1/4 inch or whether it's 3 inches, whatever type of net you're going to be making. This determines that. This particular one that I'm making with, like I said, it makes a 1 inch, not the knot, it's 1 inch. In other words, 12 rows is a foot. And making a handmade net, it's not sewing, it's nothing, no panels here sewing it together. I'm showed you, that's a spool of twine. This is a knitting needle. I'll fill this needle off of that spool of twine. And I'm going to knit this thing. I'm just a brief demonstration, I'm going to shut up. I pick up that mesh, I pull it down, and I tie it. That is a knot. This net here is going to have, oh my goodness, it's probably going to have, when I get through, it's probably going to have over 40,000 knots in it, I would guesstimate. I could figure it up exactly with a calculator. I can sit and tell you exactly how many knots. I can tell you exactly how many knots in it right now. But not necessary. As you can see, this is handmade. There's different types of knots. I use the old Spanish knot, Menorcan language. And you see what I'm doing. Phil, you getting that, buddy? Mm-hmm. All right, and I'm taking, picking that mesh up and I'm pulling it down. I'm going to do this however many times it takes to get this net the length I want it. This particular one will be 10 feet. It doesn't have a home yet, but it will. And anyway, I got started in this some years back, the Dacrons. I had a request, and I've told you this before, I've had a request to make nets out of braided material. Well, I couldn't find nylon braid the right typical size. You don't want to get it too heavy, and you don't want it too small. Won't hurt you, but as long as it's braided and it's the right strength. However, the Dacron fit the bill. I started out with synthetic material called spectra fiber. You know what that is? Body armor is made out of spectra fiber, and then I went from there because to the Dacron was much more workable, much better to work with, and so with all of that, I think I've rattled on long enough. I've definitely showed you the difference. And panel nets, go back to that. Trust me, there are people out there that make a good panel net. They're not going to last as long. They're going to, over time, in a very few years, they're going to start coming loose where they've stitched them together. You can't tie that stuff tight enough. You can apply heat to it after you tie the knots. You can take and apply some heat to it, and because this machine made it, that's applied with heat. That machine ties these knots hot. That's why they stay so pretty and tight like they are. But when you sew that together, you've got a break, and eventually it's going to come loose. But there are people, like I say, be cautious. If you call somebody and looking for a handmade net, ask the question: is this net made that the net maker tied every knot by hand from start to finish, or is it panels sewn together and you're calling it a handmade net? Just for your own curiosity. But and I say there are people out there. Be careful. If you find an individual that's doing this stuff, a lot of these panel nets are coming from Japan, China, Taiwan, no telling where labor is cheap. You know, they don't. You know, and they use cheap material. This looks like pretty good material here from what I saw of this. It's a heavier, but then it had to be a gill net had to be. So, anyway, there are good panel nets out there, but they ain't gonna touch this. I'm telling you right now. If you want to do a Google search of the 10 best made nets, what happened? We have a little technical difficulty?
No, did a close-up.
Oh, yeah, a little technical difficulty. The 10 best made cast nets on the market, and Menorcan Magic is not one of them. I wrote these people that do these, testing these nets and coming up with the best net from 1 to 10. I wrote them and told them, you know, what I did, and I can tell you, you're not going to find a better net than what I'm doing. They never answered me. They didn't want to hear it, I guess. That's okay. And you ain't worried about that. The issue is, when you buy a net from me, it's quality, 100% quality. And it's made from the best of material. Custom made is another question you can ask them: do you put a foot of heavier material up in the top where you handle it? Do you put 8 or 10 inches of heavier material at the bottom where it drags on the bottom? That makes it custom made. I get orders for a certain amount of weight. That's going to be custom. A certain length of hand line, a certain this, certain that. People like different color combinations, and that's going to make it custom made. This stuff's not custom made, no way, shape, or form. I don't. You call it what you like, but it's not custom made. With all of that said, I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Just simply, I'm going to do one pretty soon. I had a request to show some tools, net making tools. So I will get some stuff together. And I want to thank my partner. I'm going to call you my partner, my right hand and my left hand man, Phil Castillo. He's been with me now for, gosh, I guess, 5 or 6 years about it, right, Phil? Phil took a class from me, and he has stuck with it. He's really dedicated himself to making these nets by hand. And does a good job, and he enjoys doing it. His case is he gives them to all of his grandkids and brothers and uncles and aunts and whatever. But anyhow, with that said, if you want to contact me, it's menorcanmagic.com. Phone number is area code 904-217-7974. If you want to call me and just simply tell me I'm full of shit, that's all right too. Whatever you want to, well, y'all want to talk about. If you got some fishing stories, I love to hear them. I love talking to people. And or the email address is the simplest one to reach me on is usinamike@gmail.com. That is USINAMIKE dot gmail.com. I love to hear from you, and take care of yourself. Stay safe out there, and happy fishing, and best to all of you. Thank you.